Welcome to the ADV Orlando channel, where riding on two wheels is always an adventure. And if you subscribe to my channel, thank you. And if you're a motorcycle enthusiast on YouTube who just wants to see my review, thanks for tuning in to my full review of the 2023 CRF300L ABS. This is a bike on day one where I just had to take it for a ride even though it was raining. The only upgrades that were added to this bike was a RAM mount for my phone, a skid plate for off-road riding at an ATV park, which was planned. And the stock seat was nice for local rides, but a long 100-mile trip that we did to Green Ridge deemed the stock seat wholly inadequate for me. So a seat concepts upgrade followed soon. And but there's been no other modification made to this bike other than a stock bike that you would buy straight off of a dealer. This video is almost a year in my personal riding and opinions of this bike. So let's get started.
Ready, go. Went out on Interstate 81 to see what my top speed would be. It's starting out slightly uphill, but it'll start going on a downgrade. This isn't to measure how fast I can get to my top speed, just what my top speed is. And I hope I don't lose my camera, my phone.
I purchased this bike as an overstock model from Timbrook Honda in Winchester, Virginia, about March of 2024, and it is a 2023 model. And here it is, 2025. I'm doing my 1,500-mile review of this bike, and I'd have to say about 1,100 of it was on the road. Probably only maybe 450 miles was done off-road.
Making good on my promise. Ride this hill, and I got my own.
Before I talk about the bike, let me talk briefly about my riding experience. I'm a first generation rider, and at 18, I bought my first bike, and I own 3 more street bikes. At 24 years old, I did have a four-wheeler, and I loved off-road riding, but it wasn't practical enough for me to keep. So in 2018, I restarted riding with a 2012 650 V-Strom with on and off-road capabilities. Or so I thought. It was a great street and gravel bike, but not the off-road bike I'd hoped it would be. So after riding Jeremiah's KLR 650 and a couple of videos around Morgan County, my search for the first dual sport bike ever began. Not sure if I'd keep the V-Strom, the KLR, KLX300, and CRF300 was the last on my list to look for. I got a good deal with the Honda, so here I am. Now, one of the reasons I never had a bike like this is because I knew I'd always do more street riding than I would dirt, and something about knobby tires on the pavement I was very uncomfortable with. But this tire, with its stock knobby tires, which is fairly good off-road, is very good on pavement. It's much better than I thought they'd be. It was very fun in the twisties, but it didn't go to extremes to try to push that either. It also has a soft suspension, which was dippy in braking, but it never seemed to cause an unsafe ride, especially in town around 15-30 miles an hour. The only real scare I had was going down a steel hill on wet pavement in town, and I barely stopped in time for the stop sign. The ABS was not as effective as I thought it would be, as the rear brake gripped, then slipped, then gripped, then slipped, until I finally came to a stop. I was slightly over the line, and I was still pointed downhill whenever I finished stopping. So that's not too bad. I didn't lay down the bike, and that could have been much worse than what it was. But I do believe the ABS kept me from laying the bike down to stop it. I was able to keep the bike oriented straight down. And if I'd locked the brakes, I think I'd have just gone completely sideways and laid down the bike. Now, on county roads, which usually range from 20 to 55 miles per hour, were fun, and the shifter was nice, and I went through the gears at full throttle until I was up to speed almost every time. It's just really a smaller bike. You just tend to ride harder. And it wasn't fast, but it was definitely fun. The shifter was great, but it had a sharp edge on the motor, which caused some gouging on my boots. That's the only negative thing I have to say about that. And as I said, the curves and twisties were fun, but the V-Strom was much more planted, and I was much more confident in holding the road with my Methler Torrance ADV tires. And now if I throw in interstate riding, the top speed was 84 on 81, which is pretty good for a bike that size. That really surprised me. And I did wind up at a slightly downhill spot. So that's probably why I got it. Probably 81 would probably be my average top speed on the highway. And although it could do 80 miles an hour, it was not fun. The wind was buffeting me around, and it was a rough ride, and the engine was very buzzy at that speed. But worse was all the traffic around me and hoping no one would cut me off because I didn't know how visible it was. It's a fairly small bike, and it doesn't have a whole lot of lighting to it either. And I didn't want to find out how well it handled a crisis at 70 plus miles per hour. But overall, if it came to the interstate, I could probably do maybe 30 to 50 miles on an interstate to get to a destination to ride to. But I wouldn't want to ride any more than that on the interstate. Okay, let's look at the middle ground of on and off-road riding, and that's gravel roads, forest roads, and different things that you're going to do a lot of if you're going to do some ADV riding. The bike can be very washy in heavy gravel, and that's a weakness of the soft suspension. It kind of loses stability and gives a wobbly sensation as you're traveling. But reduced speed can help you with that problem, but by just riding a little bit slower. There's also a bouncy sensation that you can get, like if you're traveling through some whoops that can cause some bouncing up and down, you will get the pogo stick-like effect as you go up and down on multiple bounces. And That's definitely going to require an upgrade before I start doing any big, serious, great adventures. I mean, I'll either keep the crowd from going fast enough, or I'll get left behind, one or the other. But overall, this bike is much better than what my 650 V-Strom, and it inspired confidence to go faster on gravel, potholes, rocks, and ruts, which were smoother to ride over with this bike. Now, when it came to that kind of riding, the KLR was actually better than the 300. I will say that. But the 300 was my choice, and that's what I'm talking about. Also, in gravel, I slowed in the curves simply because I lacked the confidence in negotiating curves as you would pavement, and I didn't want the rear end to slide out for me or to me to lay the bike down. So I kind of went slow through curves and through turns and things like that. And I'd say on my gravel road rides, probably 20 miles to 45 miles per hour were the average speeds that I would do on gravel. Now, off-road riding, the setting was usually in an ATV park. A lot of the conditions were very rocky, hard soil, slabs of rocks that you ran over top of, uh, water that you had to ride through, and some pretty good gnarly hill climbs that I had to do as well. All of these, I had good expectations, but the guys that I ride with, they had really good off-the-road tires. And they thought, don't know about those stock tires. Well, they were pretty surprised whenever I was able to keep up with them, no problem whatsoever. They didn't hold the crowd up at all. But I attribute some of that to my street riding skills on staying vertical, going off-road, and on single track. I never laid this bike down at all until I got a taller seat
Had to
for
lay
it,
it
which
down
took
to get
away
off
some
of
of
it.
my foot contact patch with the ground. And twice I came to a stop and was unsure and had to lay the bike down. But I'm going to keep that seat because it makes it very comfortable when I ride the highways for long periods, because it takes a lot of the thicker, taller seat from Seat Concepts, took a lot of the buzziness out of it and made a much more comfortable ride for me. The stock handguards are worthless. They're not really any kind of protection except maybe wind. And if you're not traveling down the highway at 70 miles an hour, the wind isn't a big deal. So I'll definitely have to get better handlebar protection in the future, especially before doing any kind of single track with some good proper bark busters. Pushing myself in the ATV parks was great. It gave me great confidence with this bike. I did things that I thought would normally wipe me out, but whenever you go over something and you just see if you can just plow right through it and stay steady and follow the same rules that you do on the street as far as staying vertical, you'll do just fine with this bike. But ATV parks, you do want to push yourself a little bit. You have friends around you, and always ride with a partner with this type of AD ride also. And the suspension, again, talking about off-road, it was nice and it's lousy. It's nice because it's soft and it's plush, and when you're an old guy like me, that's nice. But when you're really rolling off-road, the soft turns into bouncy, and the bouncy can be hard to control. So that's a minus. And as my skills increase, a stiffer suspension will be needed because I'll probably want to travel at higher speeds than what I'm doing now. Another problem I have with this bike is the handlebars are a little bit too low for me, and standing up on it is just not comfortable to me. I'm 6 foot tall, and my feet, I can flat foot the ground with this bike, but still, I need to raise these handlebars up a little bit before I'm more comfortable standing. And yes, at 6 foot, 230 pounds, I did bottom out the suspension off road, but I really didn't notice it that much, and I didn't think it to be that much of a problem. I only recall the skid plate dragging maybe once, so ground clearance is very good on these. And for the type of riding that I'm doing, I didn't have any problem at all with really hitting it. And I did accidentally do a wheelie twice when trying to do my 0 to 60. So I guess I can check that box as far as doing wheelies, but I didn't hold it for very long because I was trying to do a 0 to 60. Now, I currently have 3 bikes, and I don't think there is a unicorn bike out there for anybody for anything. I think you need to just swallow the pill that you're going to have at least 2 bikes in your life if you're going to enjoy on-road riding and off-road riding. I have a Honda Gold Wing, which I ride with the wife. Wonderful street machine, but that's about all I'll ever do with it. Yep. And I also have a 650 V-Strom 2012. It has about 26,000 miles on it now, and it is a fantastic bike. I love riding it. I love the confidence I have in the curves, But off-road, it's very sketchy. It doesn't have the suspension for it. It's kind of really hard on me. And it's kind of been unreliable as far as starting here goes. And I may reach out to Suzuki and see if they have a good solution to that. But as much as I wanted to consider the fact that I could replace the 650 with this 300, I don't think it's going to happen because it's just too reliable a bike. It's too great on the road. And when you've got a bike as good as what you have, too many people that have V-Strims in the past and sold them regretted it. And I don't want to be one of those people. So I think I'm just going to keep the 300, the 650 V-Strim, and the Goldwing. That's going to be my unicorn triangle. Okay, I've talked a lot about me, and I've talked about how much I like this bike and how I feel about it, okay? But I'm going to tell you some of the things that are good and some of the things that are bad about it, just in short order in closing. The pros, the good things about this bike. Averaging 70 miles per gallon. That's outstanding. And I got to say the 250s are probably even better. I mean, the 70 miles per hour is riding around town, in town, okay? So I think I don't know if I did the math right, but I think I had like 84 miles a gallon on one tank full. Next would be the fun factor on and off-road. I love riding through the twisties. I like riding through town. You know, traffic is too crazy. You can hop a curve and do something illegal, but it'll get you around the traffic that gets stupid sometimes. Another good thing about this bike, it has a very soft, smooth ride for a dirt bike. And that was very surprising and something I really like about it. Another biggie that I'm going to throw into this, because I'm going to talk about my Goldwing. My Goldwing has 73,000 miles on it, and it runs like a top. So Honda reliability is huge with this bike. I believe it's going to run forever if I take good care of it. I got a lot of huge confidence in going out and riding places. My only fear is running out of gas or water that I need to drink. So if you like to do adventures or you want to do some cool stuff long term, you just can't beat the reliability of a Honda. Another good point are the upgrades. There are a lot of upgrades out there already for this bike, and they'll only increase as bike becomes more popular. Having it made in Thailand made it much cheaper, and a lot of these will be getting out of circulation. Seems like dealerships can't hang on to these things. Another good thing is it's a good-looking bike. We talked about that, good-looking bike, but it's going to look better the more you have it, because the more things that you do on it, the greater experiences and memories you collect, you're going to love your bike. Now, the maintenance is really easy on this. I haven't done brake pads yet, but I have changed the oil, and I did it with the skid plate on it. So I put a skid plate on it that still allows you to access everything that you need to change your oil. And last but not least of the pros on this bike is the dashboard. It's awesome. It's really good to read. Sometimes it's hard to read depending on the light, but you get everything that you need to know about this bike. It's not the easiest thing to navigate as far as changing time and changing mileage, but still the information that's displayed to you and what you get to see is great. And it's probably one of the reasons I went with this over the KLX. And that's before sitting on both of them. Okay, moving on to the cons, some of the bad things about this bike. The list of cons is shorter as you would expect, but really only one of them is legitimately a concern. The other three are either subjective or minor. And we're going to start with the subjective one, and that's the seat. This isn't going to be a bike that you load up in a truck, drive to a place, ride it around standing up most of the time, and then load it back on the truck and drive comfortably home in your truck. And sitting in that seat for more than 100 miles was just terrible for me. And maybe it's my weight, maybe it's my hips or my back. I don't know what it is, but it was a very miserable experience for me. And it's not very wide also. So an upgrade was definitely necessary for me. Maybe it won't be for you, but for some guys it's not necessary. But for me, it was definitely probably the biggest concern to me. The second biggest complaint is the suspension. Yes, it's wobbly and it's bouncy and it's unstable, but it is a soft ride for right now. I'm not at a skill level that's going to require going fast, and going slow makes the suspension much safer. But with my weight and as my skills increase, I'm sure I'm going to have to upgrade. The next one you could say is kind of serious. There's this funky brake line that goes over top of the dash, and you never can see your left turn signal blinking, which is okay if they're automatic canceling, but you ride around town and around roads with your left blinker on because you can't see that it's still blinking. But I'll try to find some online fixes for that. And the last one is kind of silly. Honda, would you please flip the horn in the turn signal locations? That way we're not hitting the horn when we're trying to cancel our lights, nor are we trying to cancel our lights when we need to hit the horn. All right, but in conclusion, of all 9 bikes that I've owned in my life, 6 of them have been Hondas. And this is easily my favorite Honda. And it's tied with my 650 V-Strom overall. But I can see replace my 650 V-Strom in the future because of the starting issues. So maybe the 800DE might be on the plate. Or maybe a Trans out, but who knows? I kind of like the KLR. And for all of you that are still watching, I really hope you got something out of this video that'll help you make a choice as to whether to get this motorcycle. But I definitely recommend for anybody who has a bike and does not have anything that goes off-road to get a dual sport bike in their garage. The ability to go on and off-road at a moment's notice is just a great thing to have. And if you're a beginner, I definitely recommend getting a dual sport for your first bike. They can be kind of tall, I know, but the skill sets you build up on and off-road will make you a much better overall rider than the average rider. And it will double your arenas for enjoyment. So there you have it. ADV Orlando signing off on my review of my 2023 300L ABS. And always remember to ride what you have whenever you can, wherever your bike will take you.